You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 76 of the DCAU Review. I am your host, Cal, and with me as he always is my good brother, Liam. Liam, we're continuing our stay in Metropolis for the month. And as we talked about last week, we are excited to talk about the very first episode featuring Toyman this week.
Yes, this is a very interesting episode. Also ties into some of the episodes we've covered in the past of Superman, as Bruno Mannheim is one of the featured characters. We get a little bit of inner gang as well. So it's, in addition to that, obviously Toyman comes back several times, shows up in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, as well as Static Shock eventually. So it's interesting. I like that they went ahead and did the origin. We've talked about that with Batman. A lot of times with a lot of the Batman rogues, they're just sort of already established. Like we don't get a Joker origin episode or a Penguin origin episode, but here we do get to see the origins of a lot of Superman's rogues here in season 1. And this is the episode, if I have not mentioned the title yet, Fun and Games.
That's right. And from my recollection, this one premiered its first season, so we're going way, way, way back. Yeah. Production order, it looks like it may have been right after The Last Son of Krypton. I definitely remember this playing very quickly, or very, very soon after the original episode. Yeah. And I don't remember this one getting too much replay. I think it was in the rotation, but not overplayed. So it was a good review of this. We also get a lot of the visuals that were in the visuals to the introduction, the different clips that are in there. There's a significant portion of the clips that are featured in that introduction piece here from today's episode. But let's get into our plot. But before we do, Liam, let's get the synopsis courtesy of IMDb.
This one might be one of my favorites yet. And this is the synopsis for Fun and Games, which was written by Robert Skier and Marty Eisenberg, directed by, and I apologize if I butcher this, Kazuhide Tomonaga.
Sounds good to me.
So that's what I'm going to go with. Again, apologies if I butchered that. Anyway, the synopsis for Fun and Games reads as such. Intergang boss Bruno Mannheim finds himself targeted by the son of one of his pawns, who has become Toyman.
Whoa. Man, that last part was intense.
I just like the way it was phrased.
Who has become Toyman?
I am become Toyman of death, or something like that. Anyway, but yeah, that is... So the plot is... And it's funny because they mention in the synopsis that he's the son of one of Mannheim's former associates, but we don't really learn that until pretty late in the episode.
Yeah, it's revealed because the sort of the identity of who this Toyman is kept a secret, and obviously with this being so early on in the Superman animated series, it's not like we're pulling from an established character who happens to be Toyman.
Right.
But there is some mystery around it because they're trying to figure out the connection between this mob boss, this guy that is clearly responsible for leading one of the biggest gangs, if not the biggest gang in all of Metropolis, and why he would somehow be connected to this guy who's going by the Toyman.
Right.
So we find out later on, of course, that he was willing to fund this Toyman's father, his business, in exchange for him being a sort of a money laundering service, and amongst other nefarious things, or gun running and some other diabolical plans that for Intergang. And because of his role in that, he was actually sent to prison at one point after he was caught. And now Toyman is out for revenge, who happens to be the son of this toy maker that did business with Bruno Mannheim.
Yeah, it's kind of a red herring, too, because they keep mentioning the name Winslow Schott, and if you're a fan of the comics, you know that is the identity of the Toyman. And then we find out, as you mentioned, though, through research, that it's actually Winslow Schott's son is the Toyman that's now tormenting Mannheim and all of Metropolis. So I think that was kind of a nice little red... It's not really a red herring, because it's
revealed immediately.
Because it's not afterwards. A mystery. We're not going to be, who's under the mask or anything like that. But it is kind of a nice little twist of the story. Be like, actually, it wasn't this guy.
It's not the classic Toyman.
Yeah, they took it in another direction, which I think is cool. And it is interesting because you're setting up Toyman to be a bit more sympathetic of a character, because the idea is yes, his dad accepted money from the mob, which means he's probably not, like, a great guy, but he did it because he wanted to open a toy store.
Yeah.
He didn't have, like, terrible motives. He wasn't necessarily motivated by profit or greed. He just really loved toys and wanted to open this toy store and didn't have the money. And Mannheim took advantage of that and then had him take the fall when it was discovered to be a front. So then the son comes for revenge from there, and it's a little more sympathetic, and there's even some of that in the dialogue with Lois throughout the episode here. But I really liked this episode. I think it's really well put together. Like I said, it's not really a mystery, but there's a real uneasiness feeling. They almost kind of played the Toyman like a horror movie villain for a lot of this.
Very much so.
Where he walks in and out of the shadows, and it's a haunting face. That Toyman's face is real creepy. Yeah,
it reminds me a lot, if you saw Toy Story 4 this year, there are some dolls in that play the main protagonists, or antagonist rather, lackeys, and they have that same, it's based off of what looks like an old marionette doll or an old ventriloquist doll.
Yeah.
That frozen smile that just creeps you the crap out. And it is. I love the plot for this. I love the idea of it being shades of gray. We talked about that. You have, should you feel, that should this guy be able to get revenge because this guy cost his father ends up dying in prison. Meanwhile, Mannheim is out running around and dedicating parks and pretending to be this great humanitarian despite being the leader of the biggest gang that has caused deaths and amongst other things. It really doesn't care about anything whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, and this person's father, Toyman's father, was collateral damage because of that, and suffered in prison because of Mannheim's greed and willingness just to be ruthless and take advantage of people. So it is an extra layer to that. Toyman is a tremendously creepy character.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in visuals certainly when we get to the voice acting. But I appreciated the plot of this so much. I think it's a good episode. It's a good layered episode. You have the intrigue and Toyman is made somewhat of a threat to Superman by his toys, I guess.
Yeah. It's a good gimmick, to have. Again, you have this ultra powerful character in Superman who's having, and Toyman himself is not a physical threat, but he's so smart and he's created all of these devious weapons that just happen to be, shaped and like toys.
Yeah, it's a cool plot device and it's a cool gimmick, and I think that visually they did a good job of making this much more intimidating than that classic Super Friends look from the 80s, which I know a lot of people have nostalgia towards. That Toyman performance is just one for the ages for that Toyman. I can't wait to not review episodes of Super Friends with you, Liam. Anyway, but
that'll be episode 1000.
Yeah, sure, maybe. But that Superman, that Toyman definitely has an iconic look of that jester type, tall, skinny jester like visual to it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, I love the story. I love how it's resolved, but not resolved with like a mystery at the end. And the plot where he actually kidnaps Lois and holds her accountable for telling only what he believes to be half the story and sort of besmirching his father's name in the papers, I thought was a nice subplot that they seemed a little tacked on at the end there, just so that Superman would be able to come rescue Lois.
Right.
But at the same time, it was cool that you got to see Lois interact in this sort of creepy dollhouse situation. Mm-hmm. I really love this episode. I gave plot a 9 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, I'm right in that same ballpark. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I think it's really, really strong. Obviously, we've already done other episodes that featured the Mannheim character, but knowing like what a slime ball this guy is and what a bad guy he is. And it's interesting, and maybe if there was a little bit more, I think, of seeing Superman sort of internally struggle with this idea of, like, having to save. And it's like, it's kind of softened because he's also saving Lois in the final...
That's true.
Final fight there at the end, but it's like, he's having to make a choice to save this terrible man who he knows is dirty, who he knows is in charge of Inner Gang.
Which is a plot device used with Lex very often.
Yes. Yeah, we saw that in episodes like Way of All Flesh with the Metallo, where where Superman chooses to save Lex from Metallo, even though
and the shark.
That's right.
Available at DCAUreview.com, by the way.
Correct.
In the archives.
But yes, to see Superman, and of course it's Superman, so of course he's going to make the choice to save that person, even if they don't really deserve it. But maybe I could have seen a little bit more of that, but that is the tiniest of nitpicks in what I thought was a really well put together episode.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. All right, Liam, let's jump to our next category, which is going to be animation and visuals. Talk about a fun episode as far as visuals are concerned. Man, there are a lot of great fun things in this episode.
Yeah, as we mentioned, because Toyman is all of his weapons are toys, we get the first thing we see is like a big green bouncy ball that's attacking people and just wrecking this warehouse where the Inner Gang guys are held up, and even hit Superman a couple times before he's able to smash it. The giant duck that has rocket launchers under its wings is
definitely an ode to Batman Returns.
Definitely,
I think.
I would think so. Yeah. And like he captures Bruno Mannheim using a giant bubble wand that I guess the bubbles have gas inside of it. The very over-the-top toy bombs with the wind-up things at the end of the episode, and
the dollhouse that he keeps.
Oh yeah,
creepy dollhouse that he keeps. That Lois
it's
wakes
a life-size dollhouse where he dressed Lois in this really creepy dollhouse, and I guess did her makeup too, because she has
makeup.
Real
her
rosy
hands
cheeks.
are like doll hands. They don't have individual fingers.
Yeah, there's some real creepy stuff. I mentioned this off the air, but it kind of reminds me of, even though this came out before those movies, but of the Jigsaw puppet in the Saw movies, which even if you're not really that familiar with the movies, you probably know the puppet I'm talking about.
Sure. It's
just a real creepy thing, and as we already touched on briefly, just the look of Toyman is so creepy, and we'll get into it in voice acting as well, but it's such a marriage of what he's saying, how he says it, and how he looks, and just that blank, smiling face as he's saying and doing all these things. It just makes for a really creepy character, and
he's wearing pleated khakis and a sweater vest with a bow tie. It's tremendous. The visual of Toyman itself, even as whether he's screaming that he's upset that Superman destroyed his toys, or that he's about to he's threatening to shoot Mannheim with a gun. It's tremendous, because that smiling, creepy face stays frozen the entire time. It's a really, really fun visual for that. And I agree. I think the giant duck was really fun. I think just having the freedom to be able to, all right, well, what would this Toyman have? What would be a fun plot device for this? It is
little miniature toy planes that they
toy
use
planes.
To attack.
He uses deadly Play-Doh at the end to try and kill Superman, which I thought was awesome. Yeah, it's a very visually fun episode.
Yeah,
and you get some cape movement here.
Absolutely,
you get the spin. You do the Superman hyper spin, which I love.
Yes.
Yeah, and I went ahead and gave visuals a 10 out of 10.
And I am right there with you. I also gave visuals 10 out of 10. Thought it was just really, really an excellent episode all around for all the reasons we mentioned. And I think I maybe mentioned this earlier in the episode, but basically every time, for the first few times we see Toyman, it's just him walking in and out of shadows, and it's just so, like we said, so eerie and so creepy, and it's a really fun episode. And that's the type of thing that you feel like on paper could end up really lame, like, oh, Superman's fighting a giant duck and Play-Doh and all that stuff, but they just pull it off in such an excellent way.
I agree.
Perfect.
All right, man, let's talk about music here. Oh, what a breath of fresh air this was. We have a supervillain theme song for this episode that is played throughout, which is nice. Of course, we have our classic Superman theme come in at various points. This episode, musically, was much better than the last few that we've done, and I think that Toyman theme was a big part of that.
Yeah, definitely. That's the main theme. It first kind of kicks in majorly in the scene with the duck, as we mentioned, and then it kind of plays throughout the rest of the episode. And that contrasting against the Superman episodes, they kind of go back and forth in that final battle scene where, Superman does something more heroic. The Superman theme plays, and then when Toyman seems to be getting up their hand, that theme plays. They do a really good job of it kind of going back and forth in I think, a really creative way.
No, I agree. I went with a pretty strong score of 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm in that same ballpark. I went 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Really, really strong episode. And we've talked about that a lot, especially with the early Batman episodes, about how each villain, when they're introduced, has their own theme, and we really haven't been able to experience that as much with Superman or Justice League or really any of the other shows. So to have that really unique villain theme came in, I think really put it over the top for me.
Concur. All right, Liam, let's jump to our final category of the day, which is going to be our voice acting. Of course, we have some mainstays, as this is one of the first episodes of the series, so we're getting some Tim Daly and some Dane Delaney, but we also have a couple extra guest stars this week, of course.
Yes, we've talked about him a couple times before. We have Bruce Weitz as Bruno Mannheim.
He's really good.
Yeah, he's really good in this episode, because when we first see him, he's doing, he's running through a practice of his speech to dedicate this park, and he just sounds so uninterested and so fake.
The irony being, of course, he's dedicating it to kids. He's like,
right.
This is for all the kids.
Yes, so I think he's really good, and then some of the dialogue he has near the end of the episode when he's talking to Clark and Lois about, this guy was a lowlife and he's better off dead. He did a really good job here, and I thought he was excellent.
I concur.
And then we had Bud Cort as Toyman. And it's funny because I believe in the Justice League episode we reviewed with Toyman, Corey Burton did his voice.
Correct.
And, 9.9 times out of 10, I'm never going to complain about Corey Burton being in a role. But sure. I do think Mr. Cort here is just the perfect Toyman, especially for this version of Toyman. I didn't find a lot of super interesting stuff in his IMDb page, so I don't have a lot to share other than he seems to have done a lot of voice acting over the years as well.
No, but I think you make a valid point. Marrying his creepy sinister, it's creepy sinister. So
yeah.
I think Corey Burton's Brainiac is creepy because it's cold and heartless, and that's why he's the perfect Brainiac. He plays that AI robotic, heartless, soulless voice very well. For Bud Cort, I feel like it's creepy, sinister. It is that horror villain that's not over the top, and I think that's the contrast between this and what, if you've ever watched any of those old Super Friends episodes, the guy that did his voice, it was straight Cobra Commander, Skeletor, just over the top, goofy, maniacal, but to marry that undertone of just, this is a creepy guy who wears a mask that looks like a ventriloquist doll that uses toys, the mask has this constant smile on his face, but he's going to kill you.
Yeah.
And dress you up as a doll and all this other creepy stuff that he does in this episode. It is a perfect casting.
Definitely agree. He's tremendous. And then, I think Dane Delaney does a good job here. This is still, obviously, as we mentioned, very early on in the series. And she's kind of drafted into the story because she writes a story about, and where she has a quote from a psychiatrist explaining sort of what the Toyman's issues are, and Toyman kind of takes issue with that and decides he's going to show her the real story. He's going to show her the real reason that he's doing all of this, and I think she does a good job there, and I think Tim Daly is solid here. He doesn't have a lot to do. He's not in the episode at the time. We get to see a little more Clark Kent in this episode. Mm-hmm. A little more of him being the investigator, with him and Jimmy kind of going through the archives of the Daily Planet to discover what the origins of this Toyman are. So, I gave voice acting for my score a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, nice. I'm right there with you. I went 9 out of 10 for it. It's really, really good. Really strong. I think a little bit more of maybe some... It's still Tim Daly's finding his feet as Superman. We know it's early on there, and I think his best performances are to come. So Took it just a hair down for me, but that is absolutely nitpicking, and so I fully admit that. But yeah, Liam, I think that will bring us to there is the bonus point sound. So I guess it sounds like we may both have a bonus point.
How about that?
Because that was the second bonus point sound. So I'll let you go first, Liam. What's your bonus point?
Yeah, my bonus point is for the scene at the park where they're attacked by the mini toy planes. It's just it's a cool scene because again we're establishing kind of what the Toyman's motif is, and we see him attack with these planes with machine guns attached to him. And one of the cool things about it, I love almost everything in the scene where Clark kind of runs and tackles Mannheim to get him out of the way, and then Clark's kind of just standing looking at these things as they're firing bullets, and Lois has to pull him out of the way because of course she doesn't know he's Superman. And he kind of almost inadvertently blows his secret identity in this scene because he's not thinking about, oh wait, I'm not supposed to be bulletproof, so she has to Lois has to pull him down and get him to take shelter, and then sort of as everyone's sort of not looking and it looks like the toy planes are about to shoot Mannheim, he's able to discreetly pull down the glasses and hit him with the heat vision to knock him out. But I just thought that was a really creative scene. And a way of, him still being, having to find a way to save the day when he doesn't have time to disappear and become Superman. I thought that was really creative.
I love that, yeah. So my bonus point sound was for just the overall Toyman design, and we talked about that before. Marrying that voice with the creepy look, going outside of the box. This is a whole new, brand new design for Toyman, one that they carried over then, of course, into Justice League. That really made a mark and I think really defines this character of Toyman for the DCAU. So I definitely think it's iconic. I think it's actually jarring sometimes when I'll see a Toyman in the DC continuity, the real DC continuity, the comic continuity, and recognize that it's not a dude wearing a marionette puppet or
it's just like a chubby dummy guy in a colorful suit.
Yeah, that's very jarring, and I think this is a huge upgrade. Usually they stick pretty close to what the original designs were, or a similar design to what we know as the classic design, but going outside of the box here really helped them, and I think really made this episode stick out and go above and beyond. So yeah, I gave that an extra point because of that. So Liam, I guess that will bring us to our tally here. Tally up everything at the end. What was your final score?
My final score, with bonus point included, is a very, very strong, in fact, it puts it into our top pick section.
There you go.
A 38 out of 40.
Wow. I am right there with you. It would have been a top pick either way. We got a 37 out of 40 for me. So, of course, our top picks are any episodes 37 or above. So I think this is just the second Superman episode, maybe, that has made that top pick episode. And ironically, it's so early on in the series. Yeah, we talk a lot about. I think the other Superman episode may have been,
I believe it was Legacy.
Yeah,
Legacy. Is the final episode of the series.
Right. So obviously we haven't reviewed everything so far, so there may be more episodes to come that are added to that. But an episode so early on in the series that made such an impact overall, well-rounded, I think that speaks a lot to the ability to take a story that may be simple, and you throw in all these additional things, whether it's the music cues or the visuals, the animation, the fun to be had within that, and you get a really good episode here. So I don't know if we even need to talk about rewatchability. I give this one a thumbs up.
Absolutely.
Throw it in there. You're watching Superman episodes. It's fun. Like we said, there's how many more episodes of Toyman?
There's at least 2 or 3 more, and then plus the Justice League and Static Shock appearances and all that stuff. So
there you go.
It's a definite recommend for watching it, even if it was, for all the reasons we mentioned, that he is an important character that comes back later in the series, but also just because it's a darn great episode.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And if I hadn't given a bonus point for Toyman, I would have given one for the sound that duck makes every time it opens its mouth out. It's not a duck noise at all. It's just sort of like a weird groan, but it makes me laugh. I've always loved it.
It's good. It's good stuff.
Really strong. All right, Liam. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast streaming service, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and of course now available on Spotify. Go ahead and subscribe to us on there. That way, when the new episodes upload, you get them delivered right to you. You can also, of course, stream all of those episodes and past episodes at DCAUreview.com. Of course, you can separate them as we already talked about. That's where you can get the categories, break it down by episode, villain, and of course our top picks, which this, of course, will join when we added it here to the website. So, Liam, anything else for the good people at home?
Yeah, definitely head to twitter.com. Check us out at DCAU Review. We're always doing just talking about these shows that we're reviewing, what we're going to be reviewing next, and which we will reveal soon. Probably it'll be on Twitter this coming week. I'll announce what we'll be reviewing for the month of November. But until then, just head to DCAU Review on Twitter and head to the website. And always look forward to hearing feedback on these shows and what you guys think we should review next.
That's right. So we won't get ahead of ourselves too much. We know that November is coming. We're excited to reveal what we'll cover in that month, and then we'll do that at the end of next week's episode. But Liam, let's talk about what are we going to be reviewing on next week's episode.
So on next week's episode, we started the month with the episode Prototype, which featured the debut of one John Henry Irons, a.k.a. Steel. And next week, we'll be reviewing the episode Heavy Metal, where he actually puts the suit on and becomes Steel for the first time. Have not seen this episode in a really long time. Looking forward to revisiting it. I know we were so excited when this episode aired when we were kids.
Absolutely.
So looking forward to checking that episode and seeing how it holds up.
Absolutely. So we will do that next week. So until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Goodbye.